In August 1942, something incredible happened in the Warsaw Ghetto, a place of terrible suffering. Almost 200 children, clean and dressed in their best clothes, walked in a calm and orderly line. Leading them was a quiet, older doctor. This man had been offered freedom many times. He had papers that would have let him escape, but he said no every time. He made a choice that is hard to believe. This is the story of Dr. Janusz Korczak, the teacher who refused to be saved and chose to go to the gas chamber with his orphans. Why would a man with so much to live for make this choice? To understand his final walk, we need to look at his life. His story didn't start with the war. It started with a new and powerful love for children. Long before the war, Dr. Janusz Korczak was a hero in Poland. He was born Henryk Goldsmith to a Jewish family in Warsaw. He was a great doctor for children, a popular author, and a radio host known as the Old Doctor. But his real life's work was his strong belief that children have rights. This belief shaped his final sad decision. At a time when people saw children as small adults who needed to be controlled and changed, Korczak saw them as people. He famously said, "Children are not the people of tomorrow, but are people of today." He believed they had a right to be taken seriously and treated with kindness and respect. For Korczak, this was not just a nice idea. He believed it was right and necessary. He wrote that to make the world better, we have to change the way we raise children. He didn't just talk about his ideas, he put them into action. In 1912, he and his partner, Stefania Wilczynska, started Dom Sierot, an orphanage in Warsaw. Mrs. Stefa, as the children called her, made sure everything ran smoothly. Korczak was the man with the vision, and Stefa was the one who managed the home every day. Together, they created more than a shelter. It was a republic for children. Imagine an orphanage run by justice, not fear. Korczak started a children's court with child judges. Children could complain about other children and even about the adults. Korczak himself was put on trial 6 times. This showed that respect went both ways. One child who grew up there said, "If not for the home, I would not know that there are honest people in the world. I would not know that there are just laws." The children had their own government to make rules for their community. They had their own newspaper, the Little Review, to share their questions and stories. This wasn't about letting children do whatever they wanted. It was about teaching them to be responsible. Korczak believed in a child's right to make mistakes, and even their right to their own death. This sounds shocking, but he meant that children had the right to take risks and learn from them without adults protecting them too much. He argued that children had a right to be sad, even though it be for the loss of a pebble. He believed they had a right to privacy, to own things, and to have their questions answered honestly. He was ahead of his time, writing a Declaration of Children's Rights long before it was an official idea. This was the world Janusz Korczak built, a safe place of respect and fairness. It was a world where children were not just given charity, but were treated as citizens. He and Stefania gave their whole lives to this idea, giving up their own private lives to live with the children. They were like the sun and moon in this small world. This was the man Poland knew and loved, a doctor, an author, and a good man. His life showed one strong belief: you must always protect a child's dignity. This belief would soon be tested in the worst way possible. The storm began on September 1st, 1939, when Germany invaded Poland. This changed everything for Korczak. During the first weeks, the Old Doctor went back on the radio, trying to calm people and telling them to protect children from the war. But soon, he was forced to stop. By the fall of 1940, the Nazis were in control. They ordered that a ghetto be created in Warsaw. Over 400,000 Jewish people were forced into a small, dirty part of the city. A high wall was built to keep them in. People were starving and getting sick every day. The orphanage was just outside the ghetto. The Nazis ordered them to move into a building inside the ghetto walls. This was a terrible change. They had to leave their comfortable home for a smaller, worse place. The world Korczak had built, a world of order, health, and respect, started to fall apart. The ghetto was a deadly place. Every day was a very hard fight to stay alive. Sickness was everywhere. Dead bodies lay in the streets. thousands of children became orphans and begged for food. Their cries were heard everywhere. Even in this terrible place, Korczak and Wilczynska fought to keep their safe space. The orphanage became an island of normalcy. While the world outside was full of hate, inside the orphanage, daily life went on. There were still lessons, concerts, and plays. They weren't pretending things were okay. They were fighting back. It was their way of saying that human dignity would not be lost. Korczak, now in his 60s and sick, became like a ghost in the ghetto, a man with only one goal: to feed his children. He used his fame from before the war to beg for food from anyone who could help. His diary from the ghetto shows his pain very clearly. He was once arrested and beaten after he protested a soldier taking potatoes meant for the children. He came back from jail even sicker, but he did not give up. He carried the weight of almost 200 lives. His diary shows how tired he was physically and mentally. "My head aches. The brain is working under strain," he wrote. He felt completely worn out by the suffering he saw every day. But for the children, he and Mrs. Steffa acted calm and in control. They were the parents and protectors, the only thing shielding the children from the horror. People who survived remember the orphanage as a safe haven. It was a place where, against all odds, a child could still feel safe. But by the summer of 1942, the worst was about to happen. Then, rumors of moving to the east started. Nobody knew exactly what that meant, but they knew it was the end. The mass deportations began in late July. The ghetto was being emptied, street by street. They were being sent to a place called Treblinka, a death camp. The walls were closing in. As the summer of 1942 went on, the Warsaw Ghetto became a place of great fear. Every day, thousands of people were taken to a place called the Umschlagplatz, or collection point. It was a train station where they were forced into cattle cars and sent to their deaths. Inside the orphanage, a strange sense of calm took over. Korczak and Wilczynska knew they could not survive, so they decided to face the end with dignity. In the last weeks, they worked to prepare the children for what was coming. The best example of this was a play the children performed on July 18, 1942. They put on The Post Office by a famous Indian writer, Rabindranath Tagore. The play is about a sick boy named Amal who is stuck in his room. He waits for a letter from the king. At the end of the play, the king's doctor arrives and says the king himself is coming. Amal, full of hope, gently falls asleep for the last time. The children were telling their own story through the play. Korczak used the play to help them think about death not as something terrible, but as a quiet journey. He was teaching them to face death with the same dignity he taught them to live with. During this time, we see the true strength of Janusz Korczak's character. As more people were taken away, his friends and fans outside the ghetto tried to save him. He was a hero in Poland, and they didn't want him to die. They made real offers to help him escape. Igor Newley, who used to be Korczak's secretary, got fake papers for him and snuck into the ghetto to beg him to leave. This was his last chance, Newley said. Korczak's answer was quick and firm. "How can you possibly ask me to do that?" he said. "I should abandon my children. They are going to be scared. Who is going to comfort them? I must go with them." Even at the train station, in the final moments, an official recognized him and tried to pull him to safety, but Korczak refused to leave the children. There is also a story that a German officer recognized the famous author and offered him a chance to live. Like all the other offers, he said no. The world was offering Janusz Korczak his life. But for Korczak, a life saved by giving up what he believed in was not a life worth living. Why did he say no? This question is at the heart of his story. To save your own life is the most natural thing for a person to do. But Janusz Korczak had spent 30 years building his life around a different idea. You never leave a child. His refusal was not a sudden decision. It was the only choice that made sense with everything he believed. Every time he said no to being saved, he was saying yes to his children. He had written, You do not leave a sick child in the night. How could he leave almost 200 of them in the darkest night of all? His writings help us understand why he did it. I am here not to be loved and admired, but to love and to act, he wrote in his diary. He felt his duty was to care for the world and for people, not for himself. He saw the children as his equals. In their last moments, he would not put his life above theirs. His partner, Stefania Wilczynska, made the same choice. She also had chances to leave, but decided to stay with Korczak and the children. She and the other brave staff members decided they would not save themselves. They were a family, and they would face their end together. Korczak didn't make this choice because he gave up. He did it out of deep love and responsibility. He knew what was waiting for them. He knew they would be afraid. He believed his last job was to guide them through their fear. To leave them would have made his life's work a lie. A friend who survived the Holocaust later tried to explain it. Everyone makes so much of Korczak's last decision, but his whole life was made up of moral decisions. It was just who he was. He wouldn't understand why we think it's such a big deal. He wasn't choosing to die. He was choosing to stay with his children. Their fate was his fate. On the morning of August 5th or 6th, 1942, it was a very hot day. The soldiers came to the orphanage. They were ordered to leave. There was no panic or screaming. The planning by Korczak and his staff now showed its sad purpose. The children got ready. They put on their best clothes and were washed clean. Each child took a favorite book or toy. People who saw it happen later described a sad but dignified scene. The children lined up in rows, just like they had for so many walks in a world that was now gone. At the front stood Janusz Korczak. He was bent over and tired, but calm. He held a small child's hand. Behind him walked Stefania Wilczynska and the other caregivers. And so they began their final march. Through the empty streets where bodies lay, this group of children walked. They didn't cry or scream. They walked in a strange, quiet order. Joshua Pearl, a writer who saw them, later wrote, "A miracle occurred. 200 pure souls condemned to death did not weep. They clung to their teacher. Even the streets seemed to cry as they watched." They were not giving up. It was their final act of protest. It was, as another witness said, a silent protest against the killers. In a world that tried to treat them as less than human, they marched as human beings, with dignity. The 4-hour walk to the train station was a final silent lesson about being human. When they got to the collection point, they were put onto the hot, crowded cattle cars. Korczak, Wilczynska, and the staff got in with the children, refusing to be separated from them. The doors were locked. The train started its slow trip to the Treblinka death camp. When they arrived, there was no stopping. The children, their doctor, and their caregivers were led straight to the gas chambers. They were killed the day they arrived, likely August 7th, 1942. Janusz Korczak stayed with his children, comforting them to the very end. The story of Janusz Korczak doesn't end at Treblinka. The Nazis killed the man, but not his ideas. By choosing to die with his children, Korczak made sure his life's work would never be forgotten. His last walk was not a walk to be forgotten, but a walk into history. His legacy has two parts. First, there is the powerful human story, a story for everyone about sacrifice and doing what's right. It makes us all ask ourselves, what would I have done? His story is a guide for how to be good in a world that is often not. The other important part of his legacy is his work with children. Janusz Korczak was a revolutionary. Decades before it was common, he fought for an approach to education that was based on respect for the child. The ideas he used in his Children's Republic, the court, the government, the right for children to be heard, were new and bold then, and still are in many places today. His writings, like How to Love a Child, are key books in modern teaching. His work came before and influenced the 1959 United Nations Declaration of the Rights of the Child. He argued that children are people now, and they deserve the same respect as adults. This idea has changed education and how we think about children all over the world. Teachers who let students lead their own learning and parents who get down to a child's level to talk to them are following his example. UNESCO declared 1978, 100 years after he was born, the year of Janusz Korczak. At the memorial for Treblinka, there are 17,000 stones for the communities that were lost. Only one stone has a name on it: Janusz Korczak, Henryk Goldschmidt, and the children. But his real memorial is in every classroom that encourages curiosity instead of just following rules, and in the heart of every person who believes we must protect those who are most vulnerable. Janusz Korczak did not save his children from death. He knew he couldn't. Instead, he gave them something that would last forever. In his writings, he left a kind of goodbye note. "I can give you but one thing only, a longing for a better life, a life of truth and justice. Even though it may not exist now, it may come tomorrow. Farewell. Do not forget."